All right. So I'm very pleased to introduce Anna Somershaf, who is the director and producer of Women of Valor. Yeah. And so Anna is an Israeli documentary filmmaker and producer, born in Moscow and immigrated to Tel Aviv in her childhood. Women of Valor is her first feature-length documentary as a director. Her previous projects as a director include Jihad Now, a TV series about global jihad, and Holyland, about a pastor in Ghana who works with migrant workers in Tel Aviv, pastor from Ghana who works with migrant workers in Tel Aviv. As a producer, Anna completed Shai K by Ari Davidovich, Mixed Feelings by the Emmy Award winner Guy Davidi, and Women of Valor. She worked on international award-winning documentaries such as Advocate, In His Image, and Disturbing the Peace, and produced the Greenhouse Project for filmmakers from the Middle East and North Africa. Anna graduated with honors from Sapir College Film School with her BFA, participated in an international program at Fémis Film School in Paris, and completed her MA in Cultural Studies at Tel Aviv University. So, very glad to have you here with us today, Anna.
I'm glad to be here with you. Thank you.
Very good. Well, let's get into our discussion of your film, Women of Valor, which we're very pleased to show at our festival this year. First of all, I would be interested to hear the story of how you discovered Esti Shushan, or got to know her, and her effort to start the movement that she began. And also, in addition to that, how you decided to make her and this work the subject of your film.
So actually, it all happened by mistake, by coincidence. I myself am not religious. I'm not ultra-Orthodox, but I'm a secular woman. And I had almost no connection with the ultra-Orthodox community. When I did my master's degree in Tel Aviv University, I met Esti Rieder in Ruski, Esti's partner in the movement. And when she told her story, my jaw just dropped, because everything I heard about ultra-Orthodox women, everything I thought all the information I got from the media was totally different. I met this strong, very opinionated woman. And when I heard about their activity, I knew actually at the first day I met her, that this is the next subject of my next film. It took me a while to convince them, because it's not an easy thing to let a camera into your life, especially if you're an ultra-Orthodox woman. But I got into their activity, got to know Esti, Shushan, all the other women there, and step by step, I got into their lives, into their world.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I imagine that for many documentarians, the subject of a film isn't always what they intend or what they would have thought of, that it sometimes comes along by serendipity. So seems that was the case here. So you've worked on a number of film projects in various roles, and I'm wondering what aspects of this project differed significantly for you from past ones that you've directed or produced, in terms of how you chose to make the film, how you had to make the film, what the constraints were?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, first of all, because they are women and it's a very, very delicate issue, I had to do something that, unfortunately, I'm a bit ashamed to say, but I did not do before. I had to work mostly with women, camera woman and the sound woman. And I discovered that it's just, I couldn't believe why I didn't do it before. I mean, I love working with different professionals, but I think there's something in this feminine crew that makes a difference. We had many, we did the film for about five years. We followed these brave women. So it was a very, very long process. And we had, of course, many challenges, including the corona and including other internal struggles. I think one of the main difficulties that we had was the fact that these women, they pay a huge personal price for their activity, but it's a price that it's almost invisible, because in this community everything is so tied in together. So if you get threats because of your activity, it's usually something people will do in a very discreet way. It's not something you could easily film. So I had to find really creative solutions to how to tell this, how to show this price. So that was one of the things that we tried to go through to do in this film.
Including maybe some of the social media messages? Was that one
exactly
way?
Exactly, because it seems like when you look at it in general, it seems like, okay, so she got some really offensive remarks or some threats, but it's much more than that. It's something that gets deep in you, and when you hear more and more criticism, it's something that can really make persons stop what they're doing, especially if it's a person who grew up in a community that always reminds her that she has to be a good woman, a woman of valor, that she has to be respectful, she has to respect the authorities. So it's a very challenging thing for her.
Well, actually, I'll skip ahead to a question I was saving for a bit later, but it seems relevant now. I found it interesting that in the film, there was evidence of both some of the potentially negative effects of social media in some of the comments that Esti received, and that I would call bullying. And it seemed at one point that she was bullied to the point of some despair. But at the same time, there are many moments where there are Facebook Live videos and selfies and other ways of documenting and sharing the activist work for posterity, but also to inspire others. And I'm wondering how consciously or how intentionally you incorporated these two sides of social media in the film, whether that's something that emerged kind of naturally or whether that was something you were wanting to spotlight.
Yeah, so it's something that came from reality, because they are really connected to their phone, as we all, but they're even more. And I think one of the reasons is that their only way to express themselves, at least at the beginning, when Esti opened her Facebook page, was through the social media, because no newspaper from the ultra-Orthodox community would give her or allow her to write her opinion. And in the general newspapers or media, at the beginning, nobody cared, because it's always easy to think, okay, that's their problem. It's a small community. It's 11% of our population, but they live in this ghetto. They want to live separately and to live their life. So let them choose what they want. And these women, they usually vote for the ultra-Orthodox parties, so it's their problem, right? So I think thanks to the social media, it allowed them to have a voice, at first to be heard without showing their faces, but quickly Esti had to be in the front of it and to take a stand, and also, of course, pay a big price. So while I was filming this film, I saw these new generations of women who came to their leadership courses, and I saw this evolution. While the women became younger, they were much less afraid to be on the social media, because at the beginning, when Esti began her activity, people were afraid to put a like on her post. People were afraid to comment, because again, the fear from the price you can pay is really big. So lots of times she heard things like, "Wow, your activity is amazing. I follow you, but I could not put a like on your page." And as the women became more and more the youngest generation, they already they're much less afraid to put their names and put their faces, because it's something natural, and it's something that they grew up with. So these barriers are slowly going down. And of course, there is also the negative side of the social media, but I think thanks to it, it allows them to get to people.
Right. So one of the things people cite as a particular virtue or merit of social media is that it democratizes communication and activism, and it seems like that's, it makes it the barrier is so much lower than it might otherwise be to get messages out like that. So you mentioned that among some in Israel, the problems of, say, Haredi women, in terms of their political involvement, is seen as, not our problem, but this community's particular problem. And I think one of the things your film does powerfully is to both look at the particulars of Haredi life and community, but also highlight some of the more universal themes in Esti's story and in the story of her movement and her efforts. And one thing struck me particularly, which was the footage you include of Haredi women watching what I think must have been the 2015 British historical drama Suffragette. And for one thing, it put in my mind the comparison that would come up repeatedly that Esti and others make between themselves and the suffragettes. But it also made me think of the power of film itself to motivate activism and also cut to the emotional center of a political issue, which it seems like that film had that effect on them. And I would add, your film does some of that same work, potentially motivating activism, but also getting to that emotional core. So I'd love it if you could comment on your decision to use that screening of Suffragette in the film, what role you think it plays.
Yeah, so this beautiful film, I have to admit that sometimes during the filming of my film, I felt like I'm in this historical point where I'm filming the suffragettes. I really felt like there's something huge going on, and I had to pinch myself to believe that, to be sure that it's real, because things like that, like such historical struggles, they don't happen every day. And it was a huge privilege to follow them and to be allowed to take a part in this activity. I'd like to say that regarding what you said in the beginning, that some of the Israeli society doesn't see that as a problem of the total society. That today, with the 2023 government, right-wing government that we have in Israel, we have nine Knesset members from the coalition out of 64 representatives. I think this number, it's of course the lowest number in many, many years, but it shows the really bad situation that the Israeli society is in right now, along with the other problems. But it shows that it's not only a problem of the ultra-Orthodox women. There are 18 chairs for the ultra-Orthodox parties, so these chairs cannot include women. And so I think people now realize what these women trying to say to them during their entire journey is that it's not only our problem, it's the problem of the whole Israeli society and of every man and women who want equality. The other point was regarding, sorry, could you remind me the...
I think I was just asking about your decision to use that screening of Suffragette in the film.
Yeah, okay. So I followed them a lot, and we had many events, but this was the only screening that I chose to film, and the emotional reaction was so powerful, as you can see in the film, because I think women really saw themselves on the screen. And that's one of the things that I love about cinema and about filmmaking, is that you can understand something with your mind, but only when you really feel it and you go through an emotional journey with the characters, only then you can really be part of it and and maybe be motivated to do something. So this story from 100 years ago really touched these women and showed them that they're actually in a very, very similar situation, although they like to look at themselves as a much more modern and much more liberate women. It's hard to acknowledge this situation. And yes, I totally agree with you regarding the power of cinema and films to make a change. I screened this film quite a lot, also at the religious crowd, but also with secular people in Israel, abroad, in festivals. And I think the reaction is always, it does touch people, but it also motivates them to do something, even if it's not for this issue. But I want to show through this film that even when it seems impossible, it's enough to have one person to make some change.
Mm-hmm. And in many cases, including this one, to draw others to them to multiply what can be accomplished.
Yes, you need to have some quality of a leader to be able to take others with you on this journey. But you also have to be able to see some truth that people maybe take for granted. But what Esti did was she just pointed and she said, this is not right. I do not agree with that.
Right. And that's how so many great movements start. Yeah. So a question for you kind of about Israeli society in general as it relates to the themes of your film. So Israel is not a theocracy. Yeah. But there is a tension between the rights of its citizens and the significance and influence of religious law in Israeli society. And to me, that really drove the story that you're telling in the film. As an Israeli yourself, how do you think about this tension, if that makes sense?
Wow, do you have an hour for that? That's a very, very painful and deep subject, especially in these days when it seems like everything that was in some ways had some small kind of balance before, now it's totally falling apart. But it's one of the biggest challenges of the Israeli society. Of course, we have many, but this affects many people. Just to mention the fact that in order to get married, people, even if they're secular, they have to do it in the Rabbanut, in the religious institution. And even those people who get married outside of Israel, if they're registered here, and in case if they want to get a divorce, they still have to go through the religious institution, which for me seems, I mean, of course, if you're religious and you want to take part and to go through this institution, you're welcome, but it's they're forcing us to do that. Yeah, so there's really a lot of issues like that, and it's not simple at all. And that's also one of the things that I discovered, that because we are so, we as women, or we as a society that wants equal rights, we have actually a lot in common with these brave women. And if we and other women in other weak groups, instead of being divided and instead of fighting each other and being taught that this is the enemy, if we find some kind of way to work together, this will end all of the bad sides. That because religion is like faith is a beautiful thing, but when it comes to people with power, it becomes really destructive.
Right, and that's certainly not unique to Israel in that regard, even if it manifests in unique ways there.
Yeah, that's why I think the film is relevant everywhere, because it's not only about Judaism or about this religion or another one. Right,
certainly. So going back to something you mentioned at the very beginning, really, which is that there's a challenge inherent in entering into the life of a person or a family for the purpose of making a documentary. How did you make decisions about how much of Esti's personal life, for example, the impact of her activism on her children, conflicts within the family, anything related to particularly the second divorce, the divorce that we kind of see evidence of. How did you make decisions about how much of that to portray on screen, and to what extent did Esti and her family have a say regarding that?
It was a very subtle journey, and a very subtle, a lot of decisions that we had to make were not only about the result of how do we engage the audience, but also how do we keep the dignity and the respect of this beautiful family. And they are a beautiful family. Their children and all they welcomed me and us so really in a beautiful way. So it is a very gentle issue, and I think that it's something that I always keep in mind when I do my films. First of all, I respect the people who I work with and who I follow, because it takes so much time and so much money to make a film, that if you only think about like the result and having like only the most dramatic, or I don't know how to call this, but like to make it, in Hebrew we say like yellow, like what the press likes. I don't know how you call it in English, but
sensationalistic.
Yeah, exactly, sensations. So it's not something that I look. I really look for complicated relationship, for subtle things. So it was always they trusted me, like they let me into their house and they allowed me to I mean, Esti saw the film just before its release in Jerusalem Film Festival, and she loved it. I mean, I think it says it all. And even her ex-husband, he was at the premiere, which was very, very exciting, along with many people from the ultra-Orthodox society, and also he was very, very touched. Because when you talk about the truth and not about the sensations, so I think it touched people.
And I would also say, not a question from me, but a comment, that whenever we're able to show a film that humanizes and shows with nuance, particularly someone who is Orthodox, that is really a great thing for us to be able to do. In Spokane, there is some knowledge among the general population about Judaism, but there may not be extensive or deep knowledge outside the Jewish community among many people. And particularly, I think Orthodoxy is often not understood very, very deeply or very well. And so it's to tell one person or one family's story really provides more for a person to kind of grab onto intellectually and emotionally, as far as what does it mean to live this life. So I appreciate that aspect particularly. So I'm wondering, because it's the title of the film, what's the significance for you of the phrase women of valor, as a Jew, as an Israeli, and as the teller of Esti's and Nivcharot's story?
So women of valor, Eshet Chayil, is a phrase that is taken from a poem about this super hero woman who is taking care of everything, and she's taking care of the house, she's cooking, she's bringing the children, but she also works outside and does everything. And in the Jewish community, in the religious community, it is used like in a way to praise this mysterious woman, but also to remind other women how you should be acting, that you shouldn't have like aspirations to go to politics, and you don't want to be too much outside. You'll let the man do what's needed, and you will take care of everything. So on one hand, they're praising her, but on the other hand, they're pushing her down. And I wanted to use this phrase and to make a reclaiming of this phrase. I wanted to show the power and the strength that this woman has, and also the nerve, the chutzpah, the being able to say no, I don't agree to that. So this for me is the real woman of valor, the one who doesn't stay quiet and does not only takes care of the family and makes sure everything is calmed down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean it's a great choice for the title because of that reframing, right? Because in Esti there are both aspects, the aspect of the more traditional woman and person, but also the person who is not afraid to be outspoken and push back against injustice. So it's
and it was really hard for her to have this title, because she always like feels like, oh, but I'm not a real woman of valor, right? Because she grew up on this idea what a correct woman of valor is, and for me, I think she is that that's woman of valor. So
well, and there are others. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just say it's funny how like ideas get into you, ideas that you hear from childhood, and it's really hard to change the way you think sometimes.
I would also add there are quite a few stories out there about particularly Orthodox women, Haredi women who flee the community and the life and tradition of that community, and just forswear it, kind of say that they're not part of it anymore. And I can see the appeal of those types of stories, but here's a situation where, as I recall in the film, Esti doesn't appreciate being told she's not a real Haredi. She is Haredi. She just is being Haredi on terms that not everyone within the community will appreciate or agree with. But she's not forswearing that identity, right? She's not casting it aside. It's just that what it means to her isn't necessarily what it means to maybe particularly men or men with power within the community. And some women probably too, right? Many maybe.
Yeah, that's a great point, Neil, because I think when we worked on this film and we tried to finance it, so it wasn't easy. We had to get a lot of negative answers, and I think one of the reasons for that is that people naturally prefer this kind of stories of people who are women who are living this community, and they're like brave enough to go out and to destroy everything behind them. And although I really appreciate people who find the strength to do that, because it also means that they have to lose and to say goodbye to many things, sometimes family. I think what Esti is doing is so brave, because she's saying, I have criticism, but you will not push me out. I will stay and I will take care of it. I will take care of it for the future of my children and my grandchildren. So for me, that's in a way even more brave to stay and to try to change.
Right, because when one does leave a particular community, one's ability to make change within that community is either gone or it's more limited in some ways. It depends, but it can be limited by that decision. So I think you're right.
In general.
So only a few more questions. One thing I really loved in the film was the conversation between Esti and her daughter about what Esti's choices had been thus far. And I wrote choices without much choice, which was, I think, the point she was making, and the real but worthwhile challenges of having a lot more to choose from. In her daughter's case, and perhaps to some extent for Esti as well, I don't know, not knowing where to put your energy. It isn't so cut and dried, right? You have more options, and that's both good and can be overwhelming. And I'm wondering, how naturally did that conversation come up? I know that in some cases, a documentarian will prompt a conversation. It doesn't mean it didn't really happen or it isn't real, but that it needs to be framed or prompted in some way. I'm wondering, did this just emerge without any influence from you?
Hmm. So first of all, Hani and Esti, they have such a special relationship, and it's so deep. And I think this scene really tells the core of the film, that everything that Esti did is now you can see the result. Even if there is no ultra-Orthodox woman now in the parliament, still you can see the next generation.
Yes.
So in the core of the things, it's such a strong connection and such a strong relationship. Of course, when we filmed this scene, we knew that they're going to open the boxes and talk, and of course there were some aspects in life that I asked them to discuss, but this was something that came naturally also from them, because it's part of the things that they discuss and that bothers them, or they're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I found that particularly memorable and resonant. So
yeah, I love this scene actually.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I agree with you that it really encapsulates a lot of what the film is about in a way. Could you talk a little about the song that you use at the end of the film? Why that song, and why you decided to end on a song?
So I had this vision quite early in the process that I want to hear this song, which was originally written about slavery, to show how universal this wish for freedom. And if you look at the lyrics, it just tells Esti's life. I mean, it's one by one her story. It wasn't easy because there were many rights, like many people who wrote and took part in this film, and I had to go really like a huge journey to find the rights and to clear the use. And then I had another impossible dream to get to Esther Rada, who is an Israeli singer. She's super talented. If you don't know her, I really advise you to look her up, Esther Rada. And besides the fact that she has the same name as the protagonist, her voice is just wow. It's amazing. So and I was so happy when she agreed to do this. So we created a special version for the song together with our musician, composer, and I think that after like very documentary direct style, when I follow them, when there's almost no intervention in the from the outside of the film, I wanted to end it with this note that is suitable for what they did, to acknowledge the fact that she was part of this huge step and this huge change that is happening. Yeah, so it was a dream that came true for me, this song.
That's wonderful. Yeah, well, it's always nice to hear about stories like that. Well, so this is probably a common question when you speak with folks, but could you tell us about what's next for you in terms of directing, producing, other filmmaking projects you're working on now, or that we can expect to see in the not too distant future?
Yeah, so actually 3 weeks after the film premiered, I had my first daughter. So that was quite a challenging next project.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. But now when she's a bit older already, I'm working on a few projects to develop them. It takes a lot of time, but it's mostly about political issues, about social issues, political in a way that they affect the society. And of course, so one of them is about women in the Israeli society from the beginning of Israel in 48 until today, and what were the roles and the expectations that women had to put themselves, like how they had to accommodate themselves through the very popular woman magazine that was released exactly in the same year. So it's a very interesting project. I'm also producing some more political project. So I hope you will hear about it in the next couple of years.
Yes, me too. So, Anna, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think is important for audiences to know, or that you want to add to what we've already discussed about the film?
First of all, your questions were really interesting. I had a great time. Maybe I'd like to add about something that I discovered during this process. I started with telling that I'm not religious myself, and that I was very far away from this way of life. But what I did discover is this importance of solidarity. And I think in today's world, it's such an important word and such an important thing that we have to remember. Each one of us has so many problems. But if we take a zoom out and we look at other people, other communities that are living next to us, we probably will discover that we all suffer from the same issues. So I'd like to use this stage to call all of you to look outside, to look around you, and to discover the solidarity and the power that it can bring to make really a great change. So I'm an optimistic person, so I try to always feel that even if things are not very bright, we really have the power to make a change. We just need to not allow the power structure to divide between us.
Well, thank you for that. I imagine that for many members of our audience that will really resonate, and it's something I think both where you are and where we are here that we need more than ever right now. So I want to thank you so much for talking with me, for your time, and all of your insights, and for making such a wonderful and meaningful film. That really, we're so glad to feature it.
And thank you for the festival, Spokane Festival. Really, it's a really great pleasure to be a part of it.
All right. Well, take care. I hope you have a good evening, good rest of your evening, and be well, and good luck to you in your future work.
Thank you very much.